in brightest day, in blackest night, with classic comic covers in sight. Here's a look at McFarlane Toys. McFarlane Toys Digital, the classic Green Lantern. Hal Jordan is arguably the greatest Green Lantern. Valiant, honest, and able to conquer great fear. He battled threats, alien and terrestrial, implementing unyielding willpower through a ring able to create constructs of anything he could imagine. Part of an intergalactic police force, he patrolled Space Sector 2814, tasked with protecting all life. Sector 2814 may have had Hal for a while. We had to wait a little bit longer from Todd's team. Though, to be fair, we did technically get ourselves a Hal Jordan. We've got a couple of them. One that comes to my mind is the one that got packed along with the Batman from Earth 32. I'll bring those in for comparison's sake. No, this is the classic duds of Silver Age Green Lantern. One of my favorite things about this figure is that it does kind of remind me of the DC Cosmic cards. Remember those? There was the Golden Age, Silver Age, and Modern Age of each of the characters. Still have those cards sitting somewhere up in my office. But though, back to Hal Jordan here, this version of the figure is going to stand about 6 1/4 inches in height, or Silver Age Hal Jordan is 17 centimeters tall. That already mentioned Hal Jordan just happens to be this one here. This version of Hal Jordan, again, came included with the Batman from Earth 32. Not a bad at a time, not a bad, still Hal Jordan. If you like the look of the more modern take of the Green Guardsman, then this is a perfect Hal Jordan to have in your collection. He also did technically get as well the same mold get used again for the DC versus Vampires version of Hal Jordan. And as well, this body's been used as well for the John Stewart release of him. Here's also what the figure looks with more some classic costume characters. First of all, here's what he looks like with the Batman. This is the Nightfall Batman. Here's also what he looks like with the digital release Batman from the DC Rebirth line. And again, a couple of stand-in characters. One that I will be displaying, though, along with Green Lantern. Here's as well what the figure looks like, with more a classic Firestorm. So Jordan gets stuff. Let's look at that stuff right now. The figure, first of all, comes included with a circular display stand. Normally would be the case, it would have the DC logo branded down below, but because this is part of the McFarlane Toys digital line, which we'll talk more about why it's part of the digital line, it does have now the digital stamping there on the front. You can see there on the side the McFarlane logo, and then on the other side, of course, McFarlane Toys Digital. Up to the corner of that, though, there's a peg that can plug into either one of Jordan's boots. You only have one peg, but you have 2 feet, so you have to choose which foot you want to peg onto the display stand. Mentioning, though, the fact that this is part of the McFarlane Toys Digital, you get yourself a card. The card doesn't look like it's really doing much of anything on the front, but if you look around to the back, though, the McFarlane Toys Digital card has an authentication code, which I'll scratch off in a second. All you really have to do is go to www.mtd.gg to download the McFarlane Toys Digital Viewer app for your Mac or your PC. Scratch the above, which I will be doing in a second, to reveal your one-time use code, and then create your account and log in, and then use redeem code in the left panel of the screen and follow the instructions in the pop-up window. Basically, it gives you the chance as well to see all these digital artwork pieces online. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to grab myself my knife. I'm going to scratch away. I have no real plans to actually use these codes myself. If you guys are interested, though, I'm going to scratch away the code. Maybe do it in such a way that I'm not going to be scratching off all the actual numbers themselves, but I'm going to scratch this all off. You guys can use that number for yourself. MJBGMZ2QLSFG5DH. Anybody that's not currently looking at the screen is probably wondering what exactly this guy's reciting off, but that's your code right there, your authentication code. You can use that online and unlock it that way. So we're just going to move the card off to the side. The figure as well comes included with a trading card. I like this trading card, although I'm not sure I like as much the face. Like, the overall image looks good, but the face seems a little off-putting. It almost looks a little more like Robin than it does Hal Jordan. On the back, though, it does have that same image. So if you weren't a big fan of the way it looked on the front, you'll probably be not as big of a fan, or as equal of a less interested fan, to see the same image in the top corner. There's a paragraph read. You can read for yourself. I also read at the beginning of this review, so I saved yourself a little bit of time, because obviously sometimes the guy behind the camera does talk a little too much. So I saved yourself at least the time of having to read the card. Gets himself a whole bunch of pretty cool constructs. I guess the first thing that we'll have a look at is the figure comes included with his lantern. It would seem so out of place if Hal Jordan didn't come included with a Green Lantern. Unfortunately, though, the thing that I'm not a big fan of, though, with the lantern is the material that they've used. If I could best describe, and I'm going to be doing a lot of best describing as in the descriptions of this video, if I could best describe this lantern, it's like a very cheap, thick gummy. Not the gummies that you would go at a variety store and pick those up in a bag. No, I mean like if you go to, I want to say like a dollar store, and if you get the really cheap gummies, you know, the ones that you're chewing on and you feel like you're chewing on a winter tire for your car. It's that kind of tough gummy. It's got a little bit of give to it, but the handle is so super thick that's kind of really hard to get him to hold it in his hand. He has, by the way, 2 closed fists for the hands. He has 1 relaxed hand, but then he only has 1 hand to do the job, and it's this gripping hand here. The hand isn't the easiest to fit around the handle. Obviously, it also helps as well if you get it facing the right way. So let's just, should I probably just change it in his hand? Okay, let's do that first. We'll put that off to the side. The figure comes, first of all, with a relaxed hand. I wanted to kind of keep the way he was in the packaging and then kind of dismantle stuff on him and show you guys how you change the hands. He gets himself basically a relaxed hand, which is fine and good. We're going to just remove these hands from the provided pegs and then swap it out with the gripping hand. He only has 1 gripping hand, which I guess makes sense that if they choose to have the hand with him holding on this side with the lantern, the other hand obviously is going to have the actual ring. So that's probably one of the reasons why they only give you 1 gripping hand. But to take your lantern, you have to kind of pry it in between his fingers. Now, remember I did say earlier, though, there we go. Remember I did say earlier I was going to do a lot of comparisons of what these things feel like to me. I mentioned that the lantern feels a little bit like a really tough, cheap gummy. I mean, that's not selling necessarily the lantern short. That's just the material that they decided to use. But it does feel sort of like a really dense, hard to chew, you're going to break your teeth if you're not too careful, really cheap gummy. Further describing things, though, by the way, this is what he looks like with the lantern in his hand. Again, the handle being so thick like this, it's not the easiest thing to get in his hand, but he holds it decently once it's in there. Removing it for right now, at least. The other thing I wanted to describe, though, is the material that they've used for the figure. I know there's still obviously the constructs down here. I'm going to get to that more in a moment. The plastic, and the only reason why I'm talking about this right now is just it reminded me when I was looking at his hands. The hands, as well as the rest of the figure that would connect to the hands, feels like candied mints. If you ever go to like a fast food place like a Mandarin or Chinese restaurant, for example, and they kind of give you that takeaway mint, you know, it's kind of usually in a basket. They give you the prongs, the tongs. They hand you one because obviously they don't want you touching those, especially if you've gone to use the washroom and you haven't washed your hands. I'm always one to wash my hands, but I frequently see some people just walking up from the stalls and they just like look in the mirror and then they walk out the door. Those are the people that you don't want to have touching the big community basket of mints. Anyways, though, it kind of reminds me of candied mints. Just the kind of material. It doesn't feel like regular DC Multiverse plastic. I'm going to come back to that, though, more in a moment. The other thing that the figure comes included with, though, is closed fist, which, again, would be just the one that swaps out on this side. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on this side, very little that goes on this side, just because, again, like his hand's going to also have the ring. The ring, by the way, though, is nicely painted. Just get to the constructs already. The hand, though, is nicely molded with, as you can see there, the ring. There's a little bit of paint bleed, I think I can see on the side of the finger, but overall, the ring looks good. All right, let's look at the constructs. The constructs that come included with Hal are kind of very similar to one another. They are just basically orbs of energy. He constructs a whole lot less other than just basically balls of fire. The way they've sculpted these look really good. They look almost like they would be using the same mold until you start to kind of dissect each of them individually. And you notice that some of the mountain peaks don't quite match the peaks that are on the other side. So they're a little bit different from one another. And I dropped that one. I did want to bring also the one that came included with the Batman from Earth 32 2-pack. It's a very similar design. This one here, as you can see, has almost like the Green Lantern ring on the inside. I think that's just the way it, see, there, yeah, there's a peg ray on the inside. So you basically would have to commit to the idea of just removing the hands completely from the forearms if you wanted to use this construct instead. You could still, though, use it. I mean, it's just a case of sliding this up his arm here. But it's a little bit more closer in quarters. It just seems like the hole's a little bit smaller. But if you wanted to, you could also use that with Hal. These don't really require any bit of disassembly of hands, providing, though, that you are using the closed fist, which I don't happen to be using on this side. So let's quickly fix that. You could, in theory, use this hand, but it's not going to quite fit on there. I mean, it fits, but then it feels like it's really tight. But if you wanted to, you could use that hand also as well. So maybe we'll just leave him on for the time being. And he also has these energy constructs, which look good. Looks good. Nice translucency of the green plastic, obviously, that they've used there as well. It looks really good, though, with the figure. Hard thing about this, though, is I'll probably just end up displaying the figure with one of them and then have the other hand, literally on the other hand, holding the lantern itself. Just removing this for at least right now. We'll put that off to the side. Talking already about the fact that the plastic feels a little bit different. I mean, the figure, the hands, the head sculpt, starting things first, is fantastic. If, again, you weren't a big fan of the original Green Lantern Hal Jordan, which, again, we'll just bring back in here for comparison's sake. Yeah, again, nothing wrong with really the figure itself. That original classic, more modern take for Hal, it was a fine figure, and it still continues to be a fine figure. I gotta say here's the old guy talking in the room right now. Oh, God, get off my front property lawn. This old guy loves classic-looking costumes. So this old guy actually likes the idea that Green Lantern Hal Jordan is actually sporting more a classic-looking Green Lantern suit. If you like the modern take, that's all power to you. If you like the way he looks like in this figure, it's still a good figure. I still like more just the suit itself to look less complicated, where it doesn't have to have necessarily so much stuff going on here. I mean, he's made of an energy suit, or I guess in this case, would he just be wearing no, he wouldn't be wearing a regular energy suit. He'd have a suit basically would come over top of his body as he used in some in the ring. But this just kind of takes the idea and complicates the matters. I just don't feel like always superheroes need to have overly busy, like suits that have so many panel lines, for example, all over them. If that's your thing, that's the stuff that you like, again, all the power to you. But for me, I love the look of this Green Lantern. First of all, the face. The head sculpt kind of gives us just more hope. The idea that nothing always has to be doom and gloom. You can have just a very happy-looking Green Lantern here with a nice big smile on his face. It's not like a very obnoxious, big smile, but it's just enough to kind of get the idea that Hal's enjoying what he does for life. He doesn't have to worry about suffering and going to his job and just hating his job every day. There's other things that you could find joy in when it comes to your work. The head sculpt looks good. I think the coloring also looks good as well. I think one thing I think they've done really nice is the way they've painted the eyes. The eyes, I feel, really pop against the backdrop of the green for his mask. Hair sculpted really well is also. The only thing I would say, my takeaway for what would almost be a perfect figure from head to toe, is the way they handled the neck. Clearly is the case that they've molded the face here in all plastic, so obviously keeping the colors pretty light on the skin tone would be easy to do. The problem comes, though, is that they've decided to mold the body in a different color of plastic, and then they've tried to go in there and replicate the neck to match the same skin tone. You can clearly see, though, that poor Hal's got a dirty neck. Doesn't match at all. It's a shame, really, because, like I said, from head to what will be his toes, everything for the rest of the figure looks really good. Very clean, also, the way they've done the emblem there on the front of his body. Now, obviously, with this one, there's variations that Hal has had his suit over the years in the comics. Sometimes he's also had shoulder pieces in the green there as well, but this is basically just a strip of green down the middle, and then he's got the black there off to the sides. The white painted nicely there, too. There's no problems usually, like if they always have to kind of paint a glove. Sometimes you'll see a little bit of bleed, sometimes you'll see like a little bit of a jagged, unstraight line. But this is clean, this is sharp, this is precise. Of course, you got the lantern, you got the ring there on the end of his finger there as well. Yeah, all in all, it's a really good Green Lantern. It's just strange, really, that the plastic feels a little off to me, like a candied mint. Here's what he looks like, by the way, on the back of his body. The trunks, by the way, are using a different material. And I think, from what I'm seeing here at least, the top part that is actually green matches pretty close. I mean, it's not quite perfect, but I think it's more perfect for the top of his torso to match the trunks than it is for his head to match the neck, which clearly isn't the same color. For the figure's articulation, though, Hal Jordan from Silver Age has the head that rotates on a ball joint. So it rotates quite freely all the way around. You can have the head looking up, down, back and forth, and again, full rotation there. Shoulders come out easily beyond the point of 90 degrees. You can take the arms and rotate them all the way around on both sides. Figure does have a swivel in his bicep, so that's good to see. Figure also has possessed a double hinge on his elbow. Hands rotate all the way around. The upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. The lower abdomen area is also on a ball joint. Legs split out. They seem to be on ratcheted joints. The legs move forward. They move back. They swivel at the top of the thigh. Would you believe as well the figure does have a double hinge on the knee? I'm not fooling you either. No articulation. No articulation. So this is basically all just one piece, and then they just would have gone in there meticulously and painted the lower half of the boots. Ankle pivot back and forth. Ankle rocker this way as well. And the figure does have some decent toe articulation too. This is one of those things that may divide kind of the collectors out there. If you're kind of me like myself and stuck in the past, this guy needs to move on and look to the future. This guy stuck in the past digs the idea of a classic looking costume. And for me, this is the kind of Green Lantern I've always really wanted. Not to say, again, that the original Green Lantern that we got wasn't a bad figure. I just think it's overly busy. It doesn't always have to be the case that you have to overcomplicate suits. This is something that they're notoriously bad for doing in the movies. They take a suit and they give it so many panel lines, and it's made up of usually little tiny shapes that are of that specific character. Let's hold on a second. I'm just going to give myself a display stand here. yeah, while you may like that look of Green Lantern, I still think it's a good looking figure. I've always really kind of wanted a more classic look to the character, and now we got one with the Silver Age release of Hal Jordan. Figure looks good. He's got some decent level of posability, and obviously he's got quite a lot of accessories to him. The only thing I would probably have said is, looking at this figure, I kind of wish in a way he could have come included with a flight stand. But though, I don't think, though, looking back on it, if it meant that I had to sacrifice, say, one of these, for example, for a flight stand, or dare I even say, I had to replace the tough gummy bear lantern in favor of a flight stand. I can always just grab a flight stand from other things that I've gotten from the DC Multiverse line. There's many figures that have come released with flight stands. I could just easily use one of those. Yeah, if you haven't had the chance to pick up this figure, or even if you have had the chance to pick up this figure, and you've always kind of really wanted the more classic take to Jordan, this is the best one going around right now. Silver Age Hal Jordan succeeds in doing something that I feel the DC Multiverse line as a whole has kind of struggled with for the first few years of its existence, giving us a said character that isn't going to then be replaced by the next thing. And that next thing happens quite often with the frequency in which Todd and his team are producing all these DC Multiverse figures. There's always going to be another Batman. There's always going to be another Superman. But will there always be a Superman that you could look on the shelf and say, I can't see myself ever replacing it? Now, for a while, I had the modern version of Green Lantern's Hal Jordan, the one that got packed along with the Batman Earth 32, and for a while, it was a fine stand-in Hal. But always sort of in the back of my mind, I was kind of keep holding out hope that eventually we would come around and we would start getting kind of classic-inspired characters. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm the old guy here, unfortunately, kind of looking at the way these characters look, like Hal Jordan here, for example. This is the Hal that I would have read in the comics as a kid growing up. So for me, this is something that's a little more up my alley. It's not to say that I don't like the other stuff that Todd and his team are producing, but with a lot of the times, the multiverse is sort of more centric around mini-verse or comic mini runs. So if you don't know the source material, you might just pass on the character altogether. I'm thinking of a character like this version of Hal Jordan, I feel, has a more timeless look to him. Could he ever be replaced? I mean, I can't even say right now as a definitive guarantee that he's never going to be replaced by something else, but I feel like this being the way that he should have always really looked from day one, and that it was fine and good to kind of do the comic mini run characters, but I think on a side thing, and to be honest, I think Todd has done a good job now to kind of add a little bit of the classic and a little bit of the modern with what they're doing with the DC Multiverse figures, that it does cater not only just to the niche collectors out there that know that specific comic run, or they're just collecting anything and everything that's coming out, or more to the older collectors out there that just for a while have been screaming, can we just get some classic looking characters? And I think that's now been answered here with the Silver Age Hal Jordan. The accessories, I think, could probably have used a little bit of work. I mean, giving him just two basic, almost the same simple shaped orbs on either side of his arms. They probably could have done something a little bit more creative, but the fact that the figure at least comes included with constructs and as well the lantern, it's not something that you really tend to see a whole lot with the multiverse figures. You tend to get maybe one accessory and two swappable hands. This guy, considering he is a McFarlane Toys digitally, not exclusive, but a digital release, I would have just expected this guy to have maybe a pair of interchangeable hands, the lantern, and that was probably about it. But the fact he also has these extra little things, whether I decide to display them with him or not, I'm just glad the fact that they actually packed it along with the character. Could this guy ever be replaced down the road? Maybe. But I think for right now, I'm pretty confident with the idea that this is going to be my go-to Hal Jordan moving forward. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. You know, here's something I want to throw out to you guys. You guys can digest it and let me know. When it comes to the stuff that we're getting from the multiverse line, do you like more the fact that what McFarlane is doing is kind of doing the mini comic run characters, which again, like you would have to know the source material, or again, you could just like the design, or do you also hope that they're also going to be doing a lot more kind of definitive Silver Age characters? And I hope the trend will continue. There's also a Silver Age Aquaman. We will be looking at him in an upcoming review. But yeah, continue the trend like this, like a Joker, a Batman, a Superman, a Wonder Woman. I think keeping the idea like this could cater to two types of collectors. One, again, like the collectors are going to collect everything, and one more just the specific collectors that are all going to be only picking out certain characters over others. I think this is the kind of Hal Jordan that might be right up their alley. Good news, though, is if you guys are interested to get the Silver Age Green Lantern Hal Jordan for yourself, he's available right now either in stores or online. I happen to have ordered this one online. But what do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below. If in the meantime you guys did enjoy this video, I want to throw it out a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and want to stick around for more, good news, everybody. We will also be looking at some more DC Multiverse reviews. That's in the pipeline. To making sure that you're not missing out on any of the things in the pipeline, hit the subscribe, turn on the bell, come back, please. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.